I'm going for one good guess to another. We're joined with Daniel McAdams. Daniel McAdams is, my mouse is screwing up. There we are. Is the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Daniel, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Good morning, Jamal. Thanks for having me on. Good to be with you.
No, man, thank you for joining me. Um, is it fair to say that Donald Trump's presidency has been derailed from what he said he wanted? Meaning, MAGA said that they cared about free speech. MAGA said that they cared about ending the war 24 hours, but nobody believed that, but ending the war in Ukraine. MAGA said that trying to think, I want to make peace, not war. And as we see it currently, they put out a bill that was going to criminalize free speech in America, anti-boycott bill. Apparently, that bill has been pulled. It was supposed to be voted on today, but Massey pointed out it's been pulled. But that was something that they effectively wanted to put out. Basically, prison sentences for Americans that protest Israel, $1 million sanctions against those Americans. The war in Ukraine, he put out an unacceptable, quote unquote, deal that Russia was never going to accept, that anybody with even an ounce of honest foreign policy experience would have told them that they weren't going to accept it. And yet, that's what he put out. It was effectively a hasty agreement that he thought Russia was just going to be like, hey, I'm getting close to Trump, so I'm going to sign it. They shot him down and told him effectively, no, he couldn't even get his proxy on board. He was bombing Yemen, just murdering civilians. Yemen just, Ansar Allah, just fired a missile into Ben Gurion Airport. And what Donald Trump is saying is that anything that Yemen does is effectively Iran doing. And so, for my take, he's creating a context by which to attack Iran. And currently, they pulled out of negotiations with Iran, with Hegseth giving a drunken tweet that they're going to attack Iran at their own choosing. Is it is my assessment wrong that this administration has gone off the rails within this 3 months that they've been in office?
Yeah, well, I heard your previous guest. You were talking. He was talking about Colonel Doug McGregor, and as I heard him recently say in an interview, if you hire clowns, you'll get a circus. And so that's exactly what I think is happening. Trump has hired clowns once again. I mean, Waltz is basically a dumb version of John Bolton. Bolton is evil, but he's not stupid. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's just evil. Waltz is both. He's dumb and evil. And everyone around him is the same. As you say, Hegseth is clearly out of his element in the Pentagon. He can't run the Pentagon. His only achievement there so far was working out a lot with the troops. Okay, that's probably good for morale, and having a makeup room installed so he can always look good.
I saw that.
We're in the media, so we understand. Okay, but I mean, it's definitely off the rails right now. You're right. I mean, in the anti-free speech stuff, it was supposedly it was those lefties who were trying to quell conservative speech, and as soon as they get in power, boom. You're right. I mean, everything is going off the rails right now. I mean, I look around for some good news every day because I don't want to be that guy who's just only criticizing the administration, but I can't find anything to praise at all.
But why do you think it's gone off the rails? Is one of the interesting questions. Also, I mean, is it like nobody forced Trump to hire those lunatics that he put into his administration? He chose those people. And Waltz, I mean, for God's sake, Waltz is effectively an Israeli spy. He should be brought for treason. I mean, they found that Waltz, was talking to Netanyahu behind Donald Trump's back in order to try to provoke a war with Iran. But B, was using an Israeli device in order to get information directly to Israel. What is it called, Signet or something like that? TM Signal. He was using an Israeli device or an Israeli application and sending U.S. secrets directly to Israel. Like, that's astonishing. But that's the guy that Donald Trump hired.
Yeah. I wrote a piece over the weekend called Agent Waltz, because it's exactly what he did. I mean, it's exactly what he did. And I think his only sin in the Trump administration is he was too blatant about it. It's not that, my opinion, it's not that Trump is furious that Waltz was trying to maneuver him into a war. It's that Waltz made him look bad by sneaking around his back, behind his back.
Yeah.
I think that's what PO'd Trump more than anything else, and that's what caused him to get the ouster. He didn't really get the ouster. He's going to go where bad diplomats go to die, the UN ambassadorship, the Nikki Haleyville is where he's going. you know. But it's not just him. I mean, Rubio. Look, just a few years ago, Trump had some pretty accurate tweets about Rubio being the stupidest guy he's ever met and all this. And now he's got like three or four jobs? He's, he's running the
NSA,
whole show, man. He's running the whole
yep,
show. Yeah.
yeah, and is the one who's talking about it, the Iran deal now, and has
Yeah.
escalated the demands in that deal to something that Iran was never going to accept.
Yeah, Trump likes to bluster, but he doesn't like to govern. By governing, you have to have control of the people who work for you. And now, is Trump a neocon? I don't think he is, but he's let all the neocons in, and they're running roughshod. He doesn't, excuse me, he doesn't understand the neocon mentality. Neocons are absolutely relentless. They do not have a reverse gear. They do not have a brake pedal. They keep going forward. And if this doesn't work, they'll winnow in over here, and they'll go over here. That's what they did. They ran circles around George W. Bush, who was the same kind of thing, probably a dumber version of Trump. They ran circles around him. He didn't know what was coming until he finally relented on the war, and it'll be a stain on his presidency forever. And the same thing is happening to Trump. He doesn't understand that Kellogg is a neocon. The Kellogg plan, which is a version of that Kellogg plan, which was from last year, was the one that was presented to the Russians, which is absolutely unacceptable. Anyone who's followed the war, even, I would assume the intelligence agencies in the U.S. have followed the war, unless they're all sort of circling and reading each other's stuff. Anyone who's followed the war would know that it's absolutely acceptable. If you don't understand why the other side is fighting, there's no way you can solve the problem. So,
Exactly. Yeah, I, I did not have high hopes for this presidency. My one hope was that he was going to end the war, because that was something that he like really nailed down and he really hit very hard. And I think within a few months in, I was like, okay, this war's not ending. He's not going to get it. He doesn't seem to understand it from the Russian side. From their point of view, it's existential. The idea that Trump is trying to be a mediator while simultaneously head of the country that was pushing the war in the first place is absurd, and Russia is not going to accept it. They've done these agreements before where the US, Europe effectively lied in the agreements. Trump doesn't seem to get that and understand that when he's making his negotiations. Like, it just seems like he's so out of touch. And I don't get, how can you be this magnificently out of touch if indeed you're trying to end conflicts? And the same thing is true in Iran, by the way, the escalatory nature of this. And part of this, I think, is he's humiliated by the Yemen thing, that he hasn't, a $1 trillion military budget, and you're not able to pacify the Houthis or Ansar Allah in Yemen. It's humiliating. That's my take. I mean, give me yours. I mean, is a lot of this fury aimed at Iran because he's losing that conflict with the Houthis? Is yeah, you can kill scores of civilians, but that's different than a military campaign in order to stop military action that is taking place. Those are different things. He's, exemplary in the first part. You can kill civilians on a massive scale. Stopping the Houthis is different.
Yeah, he doesn't, most people in Washington don't understand the nature of a war for your own survival. The U.S. has gone from war of choice to war of choice to war of choice, at least since, I would say the Civil War, but, all of these wars have been wars of choice. And for the Houthis, it's survival. For Russia, it's survival. Now, you could say, well, they're overplaying it, whatever. It doesn't matter. In their perception, they're fighting for their survival. Same with in Afghanistan. They were fighting in their home turf for their survival. And so if you don't understand that, there's no way you can win the war. They live in fantasy land. I wrote another piece last week called something like How to Stop the Ukraine War with This One Little Trick. And I went through all of these things that we're talking about, the fiasco. And the one little trick at the bottom was just go home. Just leave.
Walk the F
just
away.
leave. Yeah,
Steve
just
Bannon,
leave.
right?
And the same is true with Yemen. Call up Netanyahu and say, break that blockade. Let these people get some food. They're kids you're killing. You're starving kids. Let them get some food. Get your troops out of there. Leave them alone. And it would end. The Houthis were not going to, they're not firing missiles because they enjoy it. They're firing missiles because they see a genocide in their neighborhood. Now, you might disagree with the response, but there is a sort of a R2P, responsibility to protect, that's enshrined in the United Nations now, whether you like it or not. And they're responding in a way that they feel is appropriate for the R2P philosophy or directive.
Uh, what's yeah, Steve Bannon on that one was right. Walk the F away. I mean, because at this point, it's Trump's war. He's sending weapons. He's apparently doing sanctions. Um, it's his war. I don't know another way to say it.
And
Now
it
he may
turned. I'm
no.
sorry. I was going to say, it turns out this whole minerals deal was actually just a cover so he could start sending weapons again. Because nobody knows anything about the minerals there. If there are any, they're in Russian controlled territory. The minerals that are not there, people say it's going to take 10 to 20, 15, 20 years to get any of them out of the ground. This is not this is not the oil gusher that Trump is saying. This is cover for him to start sending weapons and counting it as investment in Ukraine. It's an escalation by any other name.
Yeah, I took it as a lend lease,
Yeah.
a soft level lend lease where he can go to MAGA and say, "Hey, I know we're sending weapons, but they're paying us back for these
Yeah.
weapons in 30 years." I was like, "Okay, dude." It's like, are you being serious right now? I'm curious on your take in regards to like, I don't want to say how do we get here because that's a little bit different. But do you think he's being maneuvered? Do you think his instincts are okay? If I can make a deal, I want to make a deal. But because I guess my thing is at a certain point, this can't just be blamed on the people around Trump. This has to be blamed on him. In the first administration, he hires a bunch of lunatics, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, etc. Again, he hired those people though, and he went with policy that those people were effectively pushing. John Bolton is a lunatic. I mean, he was a lunatic even during the Bush era. And then you get this administration where once again he hires a bunch of Zionists, whack jobs, neocons all throughout his administration, even putting a TV personality alcoholic as head of the Pentagon, which is just mind blowing to me. But okay, he hired those people again. So I know people want to say, well, his instincts are to try to get peace. But can we really keep saying that those are his instincts if these are indeed the people that he's putting around him? Like, meaning, how often can we say that he's being maneuvered as opposed to, no, that's just Trump. That's just who he is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm starting to turn, to that view because, I mean, the stuff that he puts out. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but last night, I guess it was, he put out on his Truth Social this rant about how Hollywood needs to make movies again. I'm going to put 100% tariff on foreign films. People look at it and just think this guy's a lunatic. I mean, we had 4 years of brain dead Biden, drooling and sniffing little girls' hair. And we thought we'd get a little bit better with Trump. And I wanted him to win because Biden was so terrible. But
Yeah.
I'm just starting to wonder, you're up at midnight or whatever on Sunday night and you're PO'd because a foreign film comes on. Come on, man. You're supposed to be the leader of the free world. Get it together, He just needs to, I don't know what. Someone needs to give him a chill pill. I don't know.
Nobody's giving him that chill pill.
No.
And all of this stuff just seems to be escalating. Do you think we're going to have war with Iran based on what you've seen up to this point? I mean, he's effectively associated everything the Houthis does with Iran, which is pretty astonishing considering America has dumped like hundreds of billions of dollars into Ukraine, but doesn't want to take credit for the war. He has escalated any kind of peace plan. So whereas the deal that you could have gotten, he has escalated that to something that was always a red line that Iran was never going to tolerate. Like, it seems like he's angling for something and setting up a justification for that thing being war. And by the way, Iran thinks this. You can see it in the way that they're behaving. Like when a general comes out and is like, we're prepared for, for the U.S. attacks us, we're going to hit them back without any reservation. When they're putting out videos of their missiles saying, here's a new missile that we have at our disposal. Okay, they're not doing that for shits and giggles, right? That's not willy-nilly. That's not like a random day where they're like, hey, it's Tuesday, let's show a new missile. They're doing that because the peace negotiations have effectively collapsed. The U.S. and Donald Trump, head of the Pentagon, and Trump himself are effectively associating attacks with the Houthis. The Pentagon is saying we're going to attack Iran at a time and place of our choosing. Netanyahu is liking tweets and all of a sudden himself saying we're going to attack Iran. So they are seeing something that they're responding to. And I guess my thing is, do you think they're responding to this? Meaning, do you think their perception of it is correct? That a context is being created in the halls of Washington to justify an attack on Iran, regardless of what the consequences are to us and to the world.
Yeah, I think Netanyahu and the Israelis feel that's now or never. And they've even said that, we waited for 20 years to get in a situation where we have a president we can manipulate into making this move for us. That's what they want. And I think a couple of things may hold him back, and we basically have to pray that there is a military advisor there who will sit down and say, Mr. President, here's what will happen if we attack Iran. Now, it can't be Hegseth. It has to be an actual person with some brains, who's not a major in the reserves or what have you, to sit down and tell him this is what will happen. And I think that's the only chance to get around this war. But again, what Waltz did was he just went too far. As you say, like he's sending his texts over to Bibi, here, direct. But what he's doing, everyone else is doing in D.C. as well. Everyone around Trump is doing the same thing, which is what neocons do. They manipulate They manipulate leaders until they get into a situation where the only choice out is war, and then they will cajole. But then if you start backing down, Mr. President, you're starting to look weak. We can't look weak. They only understand strength. They only speak one language, and that's strength. And you're in a corner, and that's the one thing. And they're relentless. There's nip at your heels.
Trump put himself in that corner. I mean, in the very beginning, when before any negotiations, Iran was like, we're open for negotiations. They said it right out. And you even got Pezeshkian coming out saying he wanted negotiations. The Ayatollah was less so, because Ayatollah was like, look, you murdered Soleimani. We don't believe you. But my point is, you had an actor that was there ready to talk and ready for negotiations. And Trump's response was, we're going to bomb you if you don't agree to our deal. That's how he started. And he kept that tact the entire way through. We're going to bomb you. We're going to bomb you. Iran's a nice people, but we're going to bomb you. We're going to bomb you. Yeah. That's a heavy cliff to walk down if you're not indeed going to be willing to go through with the bombing. Not to mention, it's a hell of a heavy cliff to walk down if you escalate your demands into stuff that they can't accept, and then have to also walk down the cliff. So not only did you fail to get the deal, you backed off of an attack. That is a lot to put on Trump's ego.
Yeah. It's
meaning
mafia.
I think his ego matters more than chaos.
It's mafia tactics, It's like Luca Brasi saying either your brain or your signature will be on this contract, and that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what he does. And that may work in the movies, and it may work in the mafia. And some would argue that the government is like the mafia. It probably is, but it certainly doesn't work the way Trump thinks it's working, and it's not working. And it didn't have to be this way. He could have hired better people. He could have hired people like Colonel McGregor, a good friend of mine. Danny Davis, who's a mild-mannered person. He could have been Tulsi Gabbard's, second in command, but he's mildly critical of Israel, and that's it. Mildly. The same thing with what's his name, Elbridge Colby, mildly critical. Who's the fellow, Dan Caldwell, who was working for Hegseth, who was fired because he said, well, this war with Iran is not a great idea. It's my job to give you all the options in my analysis. And he got thrown under the bus for saying, let's not go to war right now. It's not going to work for us. So, it didn't have to be this way. There are a lot of people out there. I mean, there are not a lot of people, unfortunately, in foreign policy like me who are non-interventionists, but there are plenty of realists out there who can at least put the brakes on a little bit. And he wants none of it, unfortunately.
Well, that goes to my last question. Why did he hire these people? You are absolutely right. Donald Trump could have did whatever he wanted. This is his last term. He only has 4 years anyway. He's going to die soon, probably in the next 10 years, give or take. I mean, he's old as is. And I don't mean that poorly. I just mean that, he's an old man.
It happens.
It happens to everybody, right? I can die, I could trip, fall, and drop dead here. But there would seem to be very few tethers into him because of that. You would think that somebody who, he only has 4 years, and he only, he's 80-something, he's going to be 80 soon. What strings are on him to even make him hire these lunatics in the first place? I mean, I don't get it. Meaning, you've been in Washington, you've seen it, you've worked with Ron Paul. I would imagine you could see what's taking place. And even people like Thomas Massey, who points out the Israeli lobby and everything else. Okay, I get that for somebody who's 30, 40, 50, who has 20 years career in Congress. I kind of get that. For Trump, what is it? What's the tether? What's the strings on him?
Yeah, I mean, he just may not be up to the task. I remember the Tucker Carlson interview, which was interesting because Tucker brought up the fact that you hired a lot of bad people, and how are you going to get around it? And I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but Trump basically said, well, people were pushing these people to me and I didn't know any better. I come to town, I didn't know anyone there, so I just took their advice. Trust me, I'm not going to do it again. I know my way around now. I'm not going to let them maneuver me like that. And that's exactly what he's done. He's and it's not even where you have like a couple of hardcore pro-Israel neocons and then you can balance it out with some realists. No, I mean, there's no one there to balance it out. There's no one around him to balance it out. And so it's going to take a smackdown, and the Iran war will be a smackdown because we saw what happened. The Houthis do not have the most advanced weapons. And as you pointed out earlier, they shut down Ben Gurion Airport. Now it's not safe for commercial air travel in that region now. They've demonstrated that. So if you think that the Houthis are going to shut something down, wait until Iran, starts shooting some missiles that they have. And unless Trump is thinking about nuclear weapons and literally demolishing Iran, which will earn him a place not only in hell, but in the annals of mass murder on a massive scale.
Do you really think he would go there? That just seems so outlandish. I mean, like, that seems so extreme, an unprovoked nuclear attack on a non-nuclear nation.
Yeah, but they're going to sell it differently. Remember what Tom Cotton said a few weeks ago in the Senate. He said, everyone thinks this is going to be such a big deal. We're going to do just a couple of strikes, a couple of surgical strikes. We'll just take out their nuclear facilities. Stop making such a big deal. That's exactly what they did at the Iraq War. Everyone is saying this is going to be so hard. It'll be a cakewalk. It'll pay for itself. No Americans will die. Dr. Paul was questioning Richard Pearl, top neocon, before the Iraq War, and Dr. Paul said, "Well, how many American casualties is acceptable in this war? 100, 1,000, 10,000?" And Pearl said, "They're not going to be. That's so overblown. There aren't going to be any casualties." That's what they do. It's always a cakewalk, and then when it blows up in their face, they say, "We tried. You didn't go in hard enough. Don't blame me." That's them. That's the neocons. Don't blame me.
But nukes are different, though.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's one thing to say we're going to have surgical strikes. It's another thing to say we're going to have a nuclear war. And again, an unprovoked nuclear war against a non-nuclear power. That's pretty outlandish. Like,
Yeah.
do you really think that that's... The New York Times piece didn't go there. The New York Times piece went with this idea that Israel was going to attack with the U.S. supporting. And the U.S. was like, okay, your plan is ridiculous. I'm paraphrasing, but your plan is ridiculous. This is not going to work. This is going to require a lot more U.S. support than you are effectively putting in this plan to make this even halfway acceptable or passable. I mean, they were talking about like commandos running on the ground and all of this other stuff with planes in the air, like a video game. I guess I thought
Sylvester Stallone.
yeah, right. I know, right? It's like Rambo is going to run into the nuclear facility. Like, this seems outlandish. You're talking about a country 3 times the size of Iraq. And so how do you expect to hit these sites without their response? That response is coming regardless of whatever you do. And I guess my thing is he has to know that. Meaning it can't be a situation where he's thinking, sir, this is going to just be a surgical strike. They're not going to really respond. The world is going to be great. You could be right. I mean, you know it better than I do. I mean, and that is the way they sell it. Oh, no, Americans are going to be damaged. It's just going to be a quick strike. We're going to be out by Christmas. It's not going to blow up into a larger war. These type of refrains that you would hope the president would say, no.
I mean, someone should show him the video of October 1st, the second Iran retaliation. They blew the hell out of several military bases and intelligence facilities in Israel. And the media doesn't show it, but the video is there. It's very easily accessible on X. They completely decimated Israel's much vaunted missile defense system. And that was only a very limited attack. So this is what it's going to be like if they do this, and it's going to maybe they'll force Israel into using nuclear weapons, and then the U.S. will be in for a penny, in for a pound. That's it. They control the escalation ladder.
Oh, Daniel, this is horrendous, to put it mildly. And to say this administration has gone off the rails is an understatement. Trump has no wins anywhere in foreign policy. And even with this trade war, again, this is not a win. I mean, he's in a trade war they can't get out of, lying to the media that prices aren't going up. Um, Last question. I mean, what was your expectations versus where we are now? Is there a great disparity between the two?
Absolutely. I mean, he came in and I was cheering. He brought in Elon Musk, who a lot of people dislike. But taking a look at what government does, getting rid of the unnecessary things. He said, "I want to cut military spending by 50%."
Yeah,
Who wouldn't cheer? I was cheering. Let's do this.
yeah.
Let's do this. And it was just all hot air. He's just blowing smoke. Cuddling up to a lot of libertarians. Hey, I'm one of you. And no. I mean, it's all going off the rail. He needs a reset. He needs to just stay away from his social media. Go outside the box. Call up the colonel again. They used to speak a lot. Call him up and talk with him for a while. That's what he should do. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think things are coming to a head.
McGregor knows him. I mean, well, you may not know this, but there has been no communication between the two since he's taken office.
As I understand it, there hasn't been. As I understand it. But the colonel is a military man, and he's not a politician necessarily. So when you have to say that our relationship with a certain country in that area is not in our interest, and you say it, and that disqualifies you from any work or from even being part of that team, I mean, it's unfortunate. It doesn't have to be that way.
In the communications with McGregor, and I'm sorry to dig into the McGregor thing, I'm just curious. I'm trying to get something into Trump's psyche. Where was Trump's head at in those communications with McGregor? I mean, was it, trying to understand context? Was it hesitancy to go to these conflicts? Like, did McGregor ever talk about where Trump's head was in those conversations with him?
Yeah, I think that, and I'm just absolutely, surmising, but I think that Trump 1.0 liked McGregor because he's a war fighter. He's a guy who was in a tank during the Iraq War. I mean, he's a tough guy, and I think he liked that. And I think the McGregor said, has said it publicly many times. I'm not betraying any confidence that, that Trump listened to him. Trump talked to him, and he told Trump what Trump needed to do. But he also said there are a lot of people running interference between him and Trump. National security advisors and everyone who didn't want McGregor anywhere near Trump's ear. And look what happened with Zelensky. Trump sits down with Zelensky for 15 minutes and the whole U.S. policy gets turned on its head. That's a problem. He listened to the last person he spoke to, and there's no consistency, and that's a real problem.
Danny McGregor. I'm sorry, Danny McAdams. Danny McAdams. He's executive director of Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work at Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity by going to ronpaulinstitute.org. Daniel, is there anywhere else people can find you?
Well, the Ron Paul Liberty Report is live at noon Eastern Time every day on Rumble. Ron Paul Liberty Report.
Excellent. Okay. A couple of hours, actually. Thank you for this, man. I always appreciate your analysis. Have a good one, okay?
Thanks, Jamarl. You as well.
All right, bye-bye.